Isn't that a good opening line? If I was dying, looking here, I would say, I love you. I love each of you. And yet, you know, our democracy, our planet Earth, you might sense that it's dying. And it might be time, clearly, for us to share with each other that we love each other. And then be determined to work like crazy to right the ship and make the changes that we need to do. When Bold New Democracy meets, we always begin with our mission statement. We work as political activists to build a bold new democracy that is passionate, progressive, and powered by people. We meet here each Tuesday, usually 30, 40 people. Thank you for coming and making this meeting. We know it's not us, you know. We are realists as well. So thank you for coming. We'll be here next Tuesday at 6:30. So, you know, it's a good habit to get into. Our co-hosts for tonight are the Cincinnati Women's Political Caucus with Barbara Myers, Barbara's up front, and at the end we'll get a chance to connect with Barbara. Also the Hamilton County Young Democrats, Emma Drongowski. Yay, Emma. And the Ward 15 Democratic Club with Brian Gary, the ward chair, is also helping with this. Urban Artifact is so good to us here. I mean, it's amazing. Give a hand for Urban. And the amazing Emily Mertz in the back is our barkeeper, and there's Emily. And super thanks to the two of you. There are approximately 750,000 people in District 1, Ohio. 250,000, 750,000. So we had somebody that we need to send. We're not a direct democracy. We can't all go to Washington, but we need a representative to go. And so who out of the 750,000 is going to step up and say, I'll step up to perhaps be elected as your representative going to Congress? And out of all of the people in the county, it's amazing, I think, and wonderful that Nikki and Kate stepped forward. Give them another love. At the end of the Civil War, as everyone knows, in the Gettysburg Address, Lincoln said that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth. We are at the other side. That was the end of the Civil War. See, we're in the middle, or even the beginning in some ways, of the great threat. So we are working together to bring a new birth of freedom, and that we shall not, our democracy and our people and the most vulnerable people shall not perish from the earth. For me, it's important to recognize leaders who are prophets, those that see through, the distorting lies, the distorting beliefs, the confusions. And I'd like to introduce and have him share a few words, some insights for a little bit, and kind of an invocation. This is a church. We want to make it sacred. So this is a man that really, for me, is a key prophet, leader, inspirer. Pastor Nelson Pierce, would you step forward and lead our group for a moment?
The great theologian Cornel West has said that justice is what love looks like in public. And so I believe that we are here because we need more justice in Hamilton County. Is that right? Yeah. And so that being the case, I want to open and frame this by asking you a question, and that is, who do you love? Whose love is calling you to be here on this Tuesday night? Who is it that you love that needs justice that you are hoping can be brought about through this election cycle? Go ahead, call them out. Call their names out. Who is it that you love? Call out more names. Who do you love? That's right. It is the people that we love that drive the issues that we care about. It's the people who we love who are most impacted by these issues. And so taking the names of people who have been lifted up in this space and dozens upon hundreds, perhaps even thousands of names that rest in our hearts, I want to take a moment to invite the spirit of justice to be at work even in this place. I am a Christian minister, and so I will pray in my tradition, but I invite you to join your hearts with mine in whatever way is most appropriate for you. God of love and of justice, we have heard and we hear the calls and the cries of your people, the people who are currently the most vulnerable, the people in our lives, the names that have been lifted up here in this space, the names that have not been given voice, but that lie in our minds and in our hearts. God, even the names of people who we do not know, who live all around this place. People who need justice, whose lives are depending on justice. So God, as we enter into this conversation, help us to remember what is really at stake here. More than just who wins an election. But God, we pray that through this election, that the people who are the most vulnerable would be the ones who win. Now God, even as we believe that, as Dr. King said, the arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. God, help us to be on the side that's bending that arc towards justice, so that even if not in our lives, in our children's lives, we can live in a place where justice does flow like a river, where justice flows like a mighty stream. I offer this prayer in the name of the God of love and the God of justice. And all who agreed with the prayer, I invite you to signify by saying amen.
Amen. To take just a moment, this really touches me, and that in wanting to reach out more as an old white guy into the African American community, that it was just with a real honor and excitement that I recently became a member of Nelson's church, the beloved community church, every Sunday at 11 on Fred Shuttlesworth Circle in Avondale at 11. It's an amazing community, not real big, but it's just so much love and so much inspiration from Pastor Nelson and the whole community there. We are in a church. This is St. Patrick's Church in its old tradition. And there was someone recently that told me, oh, my parents got married here. Think of the ceremonies and the, you know, the little children and making their little sacraments. I think it's Catholic, and so all the different ways that this has happened. So part of bold new democracy is to make politics sacred and to make it positive, that we as a people are bringing, as Pastor Nelson shared. For the questions now. Now we get to the part to never put you on the spot, but perhaps to lift you up, to go deeper into yourself. We have chosen not to have the typical stump speech, if that's what you call it, you know, your typical talk, but to go perhaps one layer deeper into your values and in your story, and what I believe is the love you really have for each other, and for all of us too. So our question system is going to go like this, one at a time. Questions will be asked. Antoinette will ask the first question, and then line up behind her. She'll be right there, standing there. Line up behind her to ask your questions. Both candidates respond to each question, no matter what. So if you want to address one of them, that's fine, but they get an opportunity each to answer, or you can just ask them both together. You don't have to say that over and over unless you wish. Be brief, and part of the power of being brief is actually, in asking your question, is actually to speak a little slower rather than faster. You don't try to squeeze in 4 minutes into one, then you talk fast. If you go from your heart, just speak slowly and give your question. If you go too long, Antoinette, who's going to manage the microphone, will interrupt you. Just a fair warning. Candidates will have 2 minutes to respond to each response. Part of our purpose is to keep kind of going in layers rather than one big long string. I can see you shaking your head. Is just let it come from your heart, your truth. The candidates will rotate one to the other. I think you did this at another setting recently. So I thought, how are they going to keep track? Well, whoever ends the second one knows that you're the beginner of the next one. So it's pretty easy. So we'll do this for about an hour. The restrooms are down there and down the steps. They're getting restrooms and an elevator and things, but it's not quite here yet. But restrooms are out that way and down the steps. We will do this for about an hour, and then Bold New Democracy always moves towards action. So the action we're inviting you to do is to, as you just know the candidates, or if you want to just try and get information, is to go to the candidate tables and then offer, there's the staff are out there, is then to offer to take the yard sign, or sign up for canvassing, or make phone calls, or get on their mailing list, or give a donation. So in any way that you wish. So that's how we'll do it. The last 15, 20 minutes will be action focused for those of you that wish to do that. So, are you ready? Thank you. And Antoinette, please begin with the question.
Thank you, Richard. Kate and Nikki, would you indicate to me which of you would like to be the first to answer this first question?
I'm used to volunteering for things, so I'm okay with going first.
Great, thank you, Nikki. As Richard said, you will each have 2 minutes to respond to the question, and Marie Dominique, who is here, and she'll be our timekeeper, And when you have 30 seconds left of your 2 minutes, she'll raise that so you'll know that it's time to begin wrapping up. Also, if one of you says something about the other or the other's campaign, or there's something that you would like to respond to that your campaigning candidate partner says, then raise your hand, and at the end of that respondent's 2 minutes, we'll give you 1 minute to respond. So we'll have some time to do that. Okay, so let's begin. First question, 2020 is the year of the woman. So we are both excited and fortunate to have you, two powerful women, running for Congress in District 1. When you were considering a run for this office, what was the main issue or idea that sparked your decision and fired you into action? Nikki?
Great. I thought the year of the woman was 2018. I actually very proud of the work that was done in 2018. We had a record year of women in Congress, and I think it was the spark that we needed for us to keep going. I will say that I'm very proud of the work that I did in 2018. I ran for state representative in Warren County. I did it because I believe that folks in Warren County, Democrats like myself, needed a voice. And when I had petitions done, I also found out I had a positive pregnancy test. So I ran up in Warren County for state representative, and I knocked doors at 8 months pregnant in the heat of the summer, and Henry was born in September. When I was pregnant with him, Rob and I found out that Henry had a serious cardiac condition. And that cardiac condition could have been so serious that he would have needed a heart transplant. At least that's what the doctors at Children's Hospital told us. So when he was born at Good Samaritan Hospital, he was instantly taken to Children's Hospital, and we found out that within hours of his birth, he started breathing air, and his heart did amazingly better, and we were able to bring him home. And now he's 16 months old, and he's running, and we call him Mayhem around the foster home. But we met so many other families at Children's that aren't as fortunate as us, and Rob and I looked at each other about this time last year and said, if we're not fighting for these families, who is? And that's why I'm running for U.S. Congress, is to defeat Steve Chabot, because I believe that my candidacy is a continuation of service from female veterans just like me that flipped seats just like this one back in 2018 that were even tougher. And I'm very proud of that service, and let's continue the year of the woman. Let's make it 18 and 20 and on, but a lot of it has to do with the hard-working men and women in this room that were part of my first campaign and are proudly part of my second, so thank you for that question.
Thank you, Nikki. Kate?
Yes, so what sparked me to run, I'll say, was healthcare and taking action. So I think I've worked in healthcare my whole career, bringing business skills to public health, and that's what motivates me, is getting things done, being part of bringing government, community organizations, and businesses together, and have a strong track record of that in terms of negotiating reductions in prescription drug prices globally and serving on the Board of Health here. But I also have personal experience in healthcare. I'm 42 now, and I was 33, got diagnosed with Hodgkin's. And I'm sure many people in this room have had a day in my life where everything changes in one moment when you get that diagnosis. And all the things that you thought were stressing you out evaporate, and it boils down to, can I access treatment and will it work on my body? And that is an incredibly vulnerable feeling. And when the government was in Congress was debating ACA, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, I wrote to Chabot multiple times, as someone who's worked in this, as a patient. It is unconscionable to take healthcare away without any alternative option. And he's voted over 50 times to take it away. He's voted against coverage for pre-existing conditions. And that is absolutely unacceptable to me. And it's unacceptable that he's a placeholder for us. He votes 95% of the time with Trump. we get way less money back in terms of our federal tax dollars that we give to the government, and it's because we do not have someone working for us. And I decided to run because that is unacceptable, and we cannot give this man 2 more years. And so I am excited knowing my skills and background and my track record of getting things done and my deep roots in this community. I think I can beat him, and I want to give him a hell of a fight.
Thank you, both.
Sure. You want me to hold this? You'll hold it. Okay, my name is Bruce Bernard, and I want to thank you both for running.
Thanks, Bruce.
My question is, as everyone in this room knows, there's been too many killings with guns. Suicides, homicides, mass killings just in Dayton. So many tragedies in so many ways. My question to you is, should there be gun restrictions? And what kind of restrictions would you propose?
Thank you, Bruce. Yes, we have to pass common sense gun safety measures. This is not negotiable. As some of my kids are 4 and 6, so my youngest was 3, they started active shooter drills at their school. And I'll tell you, as a parent, picking up your child after they've had an active shooter drill at 3 years old is totally crazy. What is happening in our country? As someone who's worked in public health my entire career, we're losing 100 Americans a day to gun violence. That is 11 times the rate of comparable countries. It is not because people are different here, it is because we do not have the same common sense gun safety measures. So I support red flag laws, I support expanded background checks, I support a ban on military-style weapons, and I support funding for the CDC to research gun violence. And I think this is an issue that the Republicans are losing women on, moderate Republican women. They are going to lose them on this issue. Women that are parents that have children, teachers that are experiencing this at their schools. This is an area where we can and we must build a coalition to get things done and push this through. And anyone who is not on board with common sense gun safety measures needs to be challenged and voted up.
Bruce, thank you for the question. As a military veteran, I've served in combat. I did 5 deployments overseas. So I did 4 to Southwest Asia and 1 to Afghanistan. In my Afghanistan deployment, I did carry a firearm. And I do believe that veterans can be the right messengers for gun sense legislation. I'm very proud of the work that I did in 2018 with my race for state representative. I was a gun sense candidate with Moms Demand Action. And even after my race was over, I was still nursing my young son, Henry. I went up to the state capitol and I talked about dangerous stand your ground legislation that was being proposed. And we managed to get that part of the bill stricken. Just so you know, we worked very hard to get that done. Us veterans can be tough on these issues and actually talk about, we've been to war, we've lost friends and loved ones. I particularly lost a fellow Air Force Academy graduate. She was killed in action in 2015. And it hurts to lose somebody to war. But it hurts even more to lose people in your own backyard when you're supposed to return to peace. And so I'm a big fan of universal background checks. 93% of Americans agree with universal background checks. I believe in red flag laws. I believe that we need to reinstate the assault weapons ban. And that's the way that we make our communities safer. And I will tell you, Steve Chabot has not done a physical town hall since the mass shooting in Dayton back in August. And I think we need to hold him accountable. We need to elect leaders with character, with courage, that are going to stand up to him and the gun lobby. He's accepted over $90,000 worth of NRA money, and it has to stop. And the way we do that is with electing leaders like myself who have courage in this space. And Bruce, thank you for that question, because I am proud to be an advocate for safety in our schools and in our neighborhoods. Thank you.
How do I follow that up? I'm Donna Jewell, and why I have a question is in 2017 I got critically ill. I ended up having to have my stomach removed, and I have got pre-existing conditions. I have got massive prescription costs, and I have talked to Steve Shabbat about this. And he is not willing to guarantee us. What he will guarantee us is that he is going to make sure that we have got pre-existing conditions covered. But that does not mean that it's going to be affordable health care. And so, therefore, a bunch of people are going to be left out because their costs are going to be astronomical.
And your question is?
My question is, when you go to Congress and you run into people like Steve Shabbat in the Republican Party, what are you guys going to do? How are you going to take a stand against what they're trying to do? They're trying to help out the pharmaceuticals. When I picked up drugs this month, I had an $840 drug and a $580 drug. You know, you just can't afford that. And so I need to know what you guys are going to do to be able to, you know, fend that off.
Thank you, Donna.
So just to confirm, the question is, what would we do in opposition to Republican stances on healthcare right now?
That is exactly
Okay.
what he is doing. He will go with pre-existing conditions. He is not guaranteeing that anybody can afford them.
Okay. So first of all, I appreciate your question, Donna. Just the idea of what you've had to go through is something that I think is going to require a lot of empathy. And I feel like I have that with my campaign. I don't think that Steve Shabbat has it. And let's take you back to where I was back in 2018 when we found out that Henry had a heart condition. Rob and I were terrified about what that would mean for us in his future. But we did know that we had to do something. And when he turned out to be okay, we didn't let off the gas. We doubled down and we came into this race right afterward because we believe we need to hold people like Steve Shabbat accountable. And the way that we do that is by having leadership and courage in the face of people that are willing to take away your health care, which are Donald Trump and Steve Shabbat. Steve Shabbat voted to repeal the Affordable Care Act, which would have left 50% of the kids at Children's Hospital without coverage. We love our blessed Children's Hospital downtown. They save a lot of lives there. And so we have to have leaders of courage that are going to step up. And the way that I plan to do that is I want to encourage universal health care ability throughout this country. And the way we do that, the fastest way, is through both expanding Medicare and Medicaid. And then we also have to hold leaders accountable. We need to vote them out, frankly. A guy like Steve Shabbat, you're gonna have to find a candidate that's gonna be able to hold him accountable and talk about the votes he's taken. He's accepted over $100,000 from the healthcare industry and from Big Pharma. And I've already made a pledge, and many of you already know this, that I won't accept a dime of corporate PAC money, and I won't work for them, because the only people I care about are you. So many families are dealing with that same prescription drug crisis that you're dealing with, and we've dealt with it throughout. Different people here in the district, including my own family members, have to ship drugs in from other countries just to be able to afford it. It's unacceptable, and you need an advocate in Congress who's going to fight for you, and I promise you, ma'am, I'm going to do it just like I did serving my country for this last 17 years. Thank you, Donna.
Nikki. Okay.
Thank you for that question. I think there is so much that we need to do and that we can do on healthcare. I think we need to start with the fundamental premise and belief that healthcare is a human right. And then we have to work towards universal coverage. I think to your point about the prescription drugs, I think many people know this, some don't. We are the only country that I am aware of in the world that does not negotiate on prescription drugs. So when the government, the #1 buyer of prescription drugs for programs like Medicare, is banned from negotiating when a pharmaceutical company comes out with a new insulin, with a new hepatitis C drug, for example. As part of the ACA, the Republicans forced in a measure that banned the government for negotiating. That is bananas. It is crazy No other country does that, and we shouldn't either. These Republicans claim to be business persons. We have to get pharma to the table. You can do it in a way with them where you say, look, right now your entire market is on low volumes and high margins. And we need a lot more access. So it's got to be low margin, high volume. And there are ways to do that. I've done that in my work overseas, and we absolutely have to get that done and can get that done because it is in the interest. And like Nikki said, I am not taking corporate PAC money either. The big problem with Shabbat is that he's taken over 100,000 from pharma companies, and he is compromised by the individuals and organizations that fund his campaigns. I will not have that compromise. I am very focused on getting things done in the healthcare area.
Hi everyone, I'm Dan. Kate and Nikki, thank you both for coming tonight and thank you for running. We've talked a lot in this group about the idea of negative partisanship, the idea that people are more likely to turn out in opposition rather than in support of a candidate or a cause. I can say from personal experience, it's very unlikely I'd be at a place like this if things had gone differently in 2016. So Republicans are great at this. Nikki, within an hour of announcing your candidacy, you were branded a socialist.
I was, yes.
Kate, your involvement with the Clinton Foundation is the scarlet letter for a few generations of conservatives. So my question is, how will you beat Republicans at their own game? How will you harness the abundance of anti-Trump energy in order to increase turnout?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm sure, whoever ends up being the Democratic nominee is going to have the whole onslaught of what you're talking about. They're going to throw everything at us. But I will say, the best defense is a strong offense. And Shabbat gives us a lot of material to work with. So thank you, Steve Shabbat. I think as folks know, he has his campaign manager for the past 10 years is being investigated for felony embezzlement charges, turned himself in. We're awaiting the findings of the grand jury on that. He also didn't know his treasurer for the past 8 years. And his votes, let's take him go at him hard on his votes. He's voted twice against reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act. He's voted twice against covering pre-existing conditions, which he made a pledge not to do. He's also he signed multiple pledges on term limits, no more than 3 terms, and yet he doesn't hold himself to that own standard. He, 50 times to take healthcare away with no alternative plans. There are so many issues. And also this Brent Spence Bridge. He's been in there since 1994 saying that he's going to fix that bridge. When he was asked at a town hall about it, he said it was Kentucky's bridge. Who cares I care about solving the problem. I don't care, whose bridge it is. I care that it gets fixed. And I think we need somebody that is holding him accountable for his votes and his lack of action and fighting for this community. And that is my plan for winning this, is a very strong offense.
We all know this district is heavily gerrymandered. Who's kidding who, right? Many of us live in Warren County, and many of us live on the west side and downtown, and how are we stringing this all together? Well, the exciting part about our candidacy is the fact that we can reach people across the aisle. I did prove it in my race for state representative in Warren County. I moved the needle 8 points and outperformed AFTAB and Rich Cordray as a Democrat in Warren County. And if that doesn't make your jaw drop, then it should. Because I will tell you that as a daughter of 2 immigrants from a working class family, I think we have a lot of stories to tell. And the way that we draw more people into our race is by reaching out to people who feel like they've been left behind. I will tell you I'm very proud as an Asian American to have reached into my community and said, hey, I'm here to serve, and I'm here to serve all of you. And I will tell you I'm very proud to have gotten the Aspire PAC endorsement, which is made up of Asian members of Congress that have actually made those things happen. We saw Andrew Yang bring people to the table, new voters that nobody has ever reached before, and that's what we can do with my candidacy. So not only can we bring in modern independent voters that voted for a Republican all the way down the ticket until they voted for Nikki Foster in 2018, but we can also reach out to folks on the west side and say, I've got this great candidate, she's a veteran, she's willing to put her country first, and she will put our community first, and we know Steve Shabbat is asleep at the wheel. So this gives us opportunities in all different corners of the district to not only fight against Steve Shabbat, but unite the district, because we need to nationalize this race, okay? Donald Trump is coming, okay? We saw him in Lebanon back in 2018. He's gonna have a big following. How do we turn out the vote here in the 1st District to motivate folks? We talk about service. We talk about what we have to offer with our candidacy and to fight for hardworking families here in Southwest Ohio, and that's what I feel like I can bring to this district. So thank you for that question.
Marlena Brookfield, happy to see 2 ladies gonna run against Steve Shabbat. What I have to ask tonight, I have to preface by saying someone's name. His name was Master Sergeant Ryan Keyes. My daughter's uncle went to basic training in 2001, and in September 2019, killed himself, active duty service member. And what I want to know are what are concrete steps that you will take to ensure that our military budget will will handle our service members coming back, or even staying here, will handle the mental health needs that they have so we don't lose any more.
Marlena, I know we've talked about this before, and I'm really sorry about your loss. I know you shared that with me before, and it's painful to me too. Rob and I have lost fellow veteran service members who also flew the same airplane as us because our veterans are under too much pressure. I will tell you, in the foster home, we've done a combined 9 deployments. That's a lot of deployments for 2 young kids who were under the age of 35 before we got out of the service. Lots of military families are being asked to go again and again without any end in sight. And I will tell you that I take it very personal. And I think what we need are more veteran members in Congress that are going to step up to the general officers and say, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? And I want a solution for when you're bringing them home. And I think that that is what it's going to take, is we have to put pressure on those military leaders. And the best people to do that are members of Congress, because we outrank the general officers. We can put pressure on them budget-wise. We can put pressure on them and hold them accountable for all the money that they're spending, and they haven't given us a solution to how we're coming home. It's very personal to me, and like I said, I have lost friends, fellow graduates, and I'm very sorry for your loss. But the way that we make these changes happen is we need more veterans at the table who can advocate for those military families. They don't have an ability to speak up for themselves because they can't talk to the press, and they have to continue to be prepared to go to war, and they are asked again and again with orders to go and to be ready so that they can forward their career. And there is an immense amount of pressure, not only on those military members, but on their families back home. And then we have to talk about how we're gonna take care of those military families once they separate and once they're veterans. And I believe I can be an advocate for both military families that are active duty, like your family, and also veterans. And I appreciate that question, and I feel your loss, sister, and not one more, not one more.
Yeah, thanks Marlena for sharing that. I think it's heartbreaking, and you're not the only one. There are many families that have similar situations like that, and we need to acknowledge that, and we need to take care of our service members when they're in active duty and when they come home. And we have to acknowledge what that means for support. It is full support for employment opportunities, and it's support for healthcare and mental health. I don't know if you followed the recent tweets by our president dismissing PTSD and mental health challenges and the veterans, and that is absolutely unacceptable. and we have to call him out on that, and we need people and leaders that stand up to him and call it out, because we have to have the funding and the support needed for these families, not just within the VA system, but the whole wraparound of service. We owe it to them. They have put their lives on the line for our country, and we owe it to them to support them when they return. And I think we are not funding mental health at the level that it needs to be funded and supported, and that is hugely important to me as well, and would be very supportive of that.
Hi there, my name is Emma Drangowski. So it is so great to have two women who are running for office who both support mine and every other human's right to health care, specifically around reproductive health care. So my question to you both is whether or not you support every person's right to access that care by repealing the Hyde Amendment.
Thanks, Emma, for that question. I do. I think access, I am strongly pro-choice and supportive of women's reproductive rights. It is why I believe that we need more women at all levels of our government. I think women are in the best position to make decisions about their bodies. It makes my blood boil when others make that decision. I do support repeal of Hyde. I think, to me, it is important that access to safe abortion care needs to be accessible for everyone. And without repeal of Hyde, it is not accessible to poor women in the same way it is to women who have means. So I am supportive of that.
Thank you for your question. I do support that. I will say that what really concerns me is that in the last 6 months, we had 2 Planned Parenthood clinics close here in Cincinnati. We were both there when that happened, and it was heartbreaking because there are a lot of women and men that won't have access to care now that those clinics are closed. And I think that we need to have leaders of courage that are going to stand up for women's reproductive health. My personal run-in with that type of scenario was, I had a girlfriend in college that had been date raped. And the next day, she goes to her provider, and he says, well, I don't agree with the morning after pill, so you're gonna have to wait until the next doctor comes on call. And I was floored with the fact she was treated like that. And I think that we need to continue to advocate for women's reproductive health, and we need people like myself in Congress that are gonna stand up to guys like Steve Shabbat, who are using fear to activate his base. And we need to actually stand up for what makes sense for not only women that are in that situation that my girlfriend was in, but also husbands and wives that might run into a situation where they run into something where they're dealing with a crisis at the 18-week, the 20-week point, and they don't know what they're gonna do, and that should be a decision between them and their healthcare provider. And I think there are ways that we can talk about this, where we can be advocate for families, just like my own, that are gonna need folks like myself that are gonna work for women's reproductive health, and also for families that need access to that care and need it to be a decision between that family and their doctor. So I appreciate that question.
Yeah, my name's Peter Rose. I understand that elections are based primarily on domestic issues. At the same time, within the last few weeks, we've almost fumbled into a war, and one could imagine Steve Shabbat being nothing but a stupid echo, is supporting any idiotic thing that the president may choose to do. So I would like to know how each of you thinks we should relate to Iran.
Okay, so the question is,
what's your conception of what policy we as the United States should have towards the country of Iran?
okay. Well, I will tell you, as a military combat veteran, it very much concerns me. So just to kind of ground you all, since we didn't do introduction. So I was an Air Force combat pilot. I flew 217 missions over Iraq and Afghanistan. So I would fly missions in Southwest Asia, into Iraq and into Afghanistan, and we would fly right by the Iranian border. And I was acutely aware of the surface-to-air missile threat that there is in Iran. I was acutely aware of what they were capable of doing and how we did not want to ignite a war with Iran. I will tell you, there was a thunderstorm that actually threatened to push me from Pakistan into Iran, and I chose the thunderstorm instead of Iran. That's how dangerous that country is to my aircraft and to the safety of my crew. So hopefully that grounds you in how serious I take national security issues. I also have a master's degree in diplomacy. I got that degree while I was flying in and out of Iraq and Afghanistan throughout my time in combat. So after having grounded you there, I do not want to get into another conflict, and I do not want to get into a conflict with Iran. We need more veterans in Congress that can stand up to people who want to get us into another conflict, like Donald Trump, like Steve Chabot, and the way that we do that is through my candidacy. So thank you so much for your question. I do not want to send another one of my brothers and sisters that are currently deployed there right now to another conflict to die. We have to find ways to deal with these problems diplomatically. And the way that we do that is with having the right leaders at the table that are going to question the decisions that are made by those general officers and also question the president. And the way we do that is having strong veterans on the ticket that are going to challenge Steve Chabot and send Donald Trump packing here in 2020 by flipping the seat here in Southwest Ohio. So I appreciate that question, sir.
Thanks, Peter. We need to de-escalate and avoid war with Iran at all costs. I feel very strongly that that is across the board in our, we need to think about as leaders, what would it be like to send your own child, your own family member into conflict? We need, as a country, to avoid war at all costs and try to do everything possible to avoid that. I think, there are situations where we have to go there, but in the Iran situation, it is horrifying what has happened with our president and with our Republican members of Congress, including Steve Chabot, who won't stand up to him and who know that he is escalating things when all the folks that are the professionals in this have been working in this space for years know that we need to be de-escalating and move Iran away from getting a nuclear weapon. So I think that is my approach. I also believe that we need more leaders who understand international diplomacy and look at investments in that as a way to avoid war as well. As someone who spent 12 years working in international health, lived in Zambia for 2 years, and another 10 years working with African countries and Southeast Asian countries, I know a lot about, there are a lot of things we can accomplish through relationships and investment and partnership and diplomacy as opposed to escalating to war. So that would be the other part of it to me, is we need to use all the measures available from diplomacy to avoid getting to stages of war.
Hello, my name is James Kinsman, and I don't believe that our government should be for sale. And so I'll be following up with your campaigns about an amendment, a pledge for an amendment to get money out of politics. And I would be honored to have either of you two strong women represent me in Washington, D.C. So my only question is, when either of you beat Chabot, what can you opine on what you would do to get an amendment passed about getting money out of politics?
Thank you, James. I feel so strongly about this issue as well. I think it is crazy how much money is involved in our political system. To have any chance of beating Chabot, whether it's Nikki, whether it's me, we have to raise a minimum of $3 million. AFTEP raised $4 million. That is crazy. And we're not taking corporate PAC donations because we need to be independent. And it is influencing who represents us. So I would be supportive. We need to end Citizens United. That was the corporations are not people. I mean, right now we see there's been record money spent in this. Steve Chabot, as we said here, has TV commercials airing through a dark money super PAC saying that call him to thank him for support of H.R. 19 in his effort to reduce a bipartisan bill to reduce prescription drug prices. Anyone go and look up H.R. 19. There is not a single independent, not a single Democrat on it. It was written by pharma companies. And that is the result of Citizens United. And so we have got to overturn that. We also, I am supportive not just of that, but we've got to get rid of the gerrymandering and have same-day voter registration and support voter rights. I think those three things together, getting money out of politics, addressing the gerrymandering, and addressing enhancing voter rights are key to bringing back our democracy from where we are.
Thank you for asking that question. I will tell you, as the humble daughter of two immigrants from a working class home, my father was an auto mechanic and my mother was a secretary. And at the age of 50, my dad actually fell off a ladder and he broke his back. And when that happened, we lost everything. He went bankrupt. Mom went back to college to finish school to support the family in a more substantial way than she was. And it was a huge drain on our family. And I will tell you that I'm proud that I sent money home to help pay for school. So nobody knows how more critical it is to preserve and save the middle class than somebody who comes from the middle class and who understands that money in politics can actually make it quite ugly. And the right thing to do is to have leaders of character with integrity that are willing to step into these spaces and actually challenge the status quo. And that's why I'm very proud to be running as an outsider. I believe that we need more folks like myself at the table. And if you're not at the table, then sir, we're on the menu. And I will say that I'm very proud that I've already made that no corporate PAC commitment publicly, and we do need to end Citizens United.
Thank you.
My name is Robert. The war in Iraq, or the invasion of Iraq by the United States, has cost hundreds of thousands of lives of people in the Middle East and Americans. It's cost in excess of trillions of dollars. The war in Afghanistan has lasted longer than any American war in American history. Was this war a mistake? Was the invasion of Iraq a mistake? And what do you consider it to be a war crime?
Okay. So first of all, I'll ground you in my background a little bit. Was it Richard, or is it my turn or yours? Yes, okay, great. Just want to make sure. So, sir, I was a junior at the Air Force Academy when September 11th happened, and I decided to step up and volunteer for Air Force pilot training, knowing that I'd be sent off to war. When we were cadets at the dining room table, we actually discussed, hey, we're going to war with Iraq too? We just had September 11th happen. We're already engaged. Our friends and our countrymen are going to war in Afghanistan, but we're going to Iraq too. And there was all this WMD. That's all they could talk about. And I thought that there were fellow Democrats, because I've always been a Democrat, that voted to go to war with Iraq, and I trusted their judgment. And I was very disappointed to find out there were no weapons of mass destruction. So disappointed that I've always said in private, because I was a military officer, so you don't talk about public policy while you're in the service, that I disagreed with the war in Iraq. And I was very disappointed with the way that President George W. Bush handled that conflict. I think that it was a mistake. And I will say that nobody knows better than someone who's deployed 4 times over the deserts of Iraq. I will tell you it's quite hot. That we don't belong there and we should be getting out. But we need veterans in Congress to be able to hold not only this president, but also military general officers accountable for their actions. And general officers report to Congress, not the other way around. And we need to continue to drive those outcomes and get us out of those conflicts. So I appreciate your question, because I've lost too many friends and loved ones to those conflicts, and I definitely believe that it was a mistake going into Iraq. So I appreciate that question.
Yes, so certainly, knowing what we now know, clearly it was a mistake to go into Iraq, and we should not have done it. I think we are, I guess one of the things that I would hope we can take away as a country, I mean, look, if you look at the measures of what we hope to get out of it, and look at where we are now, like, Is it more stable there? Are our goals accomplished? I think we'd be hard-pressed to say that it was worth the investment in what we've lost in lives and all the resources that we're putting to it. And so I think what's important for us as a country, and this isn't the first time that's happened with many of our wars, we've stayed in too long and had too great a cost for what has come out of it. We need to really reflect and have some self-awareness around what have we learned. And let's look back and how can we avoid making these mistakes again. And I do think a lot of it is getting, I don't know how many people have watched the Vietnam documentary, but that is, I mean, there's these, we need to learn lessons from our experiences with these wars, and we have got to reckon with, it's not about ego, it's not about just because we made a decision and we were wrong that we have to continue to suffer and have losses as a result of that. I think we need leaders that have the courage to stand up and say, we made a mistake, we are where we are, how do we minimize the further losses from where we are at this point? And I think that that needs to happen with Iraq as well, in terms of, you know, taking accounting of where we are, what have we learned, and be honest with ourselves about it. And I also think we need more women who, again, are very good at de-escalating and often have less ego. And our mothers who know these are your children going into places like this. And so I think that helps too to avoid going into situations where we can repeat similar mistakes.
Hi, my name is Nicole Gunderman, and I work within the agricultural community, so this is a much more domestic question. Here in this urban center, we might not think about agriculture that much, although we do all eat. And in the state of Ohio, 1 in 7 jobs are ag-related. 2019 has been was a really hard year for farmers in Ohio between trade wars and climate change and weather events. So farmers are struggling, and yet they are really being given quite a good line by the current administration and have a lot of support for Shabbat. At the same time, we have a new understanding of how agriculture can help us to mitigate climate change by sequestering carbon in the soil, and yet making those changes to our agricultural practices are expensive, and that burden is often shifted onto farmers. What would you say to Ohio's farmers to get them to give you their vote?
Yes, thanks, Nicole. I mean, I think thank you for raising those issues. Like, climate to me is the existential crisis facing our country and our world. So all these other issues that we're talking about are not going to matter at all if we continue on this path. Like, none of us are going to be here, so we have to address it. And I do feel very strongly that we, you know, have to move to net zero emissions by 2050 and put a price on carbon and take bold actions to address climate change. I think for our farmers, we have to support them. We have to make it work for them economically. And so that does mean sitting down with them and understanding and, you know, making the economics work. It has gotten, I mean, we have fewer and fewer farmers in our country. We're moving towards these mega farms, and it's hard for individual farmers. And I think we do need to sit with them and work out, as we take these bold actions to address climate change, how do we support you to make the economics work so you can continue your farm? My first job out of college, I went to Indiana for college, and I worked for Senator Evan Bayh out of college and spent the first 3 months answering phones, and I talked to a lot of farmers' wives. And these are people, you know, they've had farms in their generations, in their family for many, many generations, and they can't pass them on to their children because they cannot make a living. And so we have to support them and work with them towards policies that make it possible to both address climate change, but also support them so that they can continue to have the farming industry. As you said, it's increasingly important, and we all eat, so we need it.
I appreciate the question, and I think the biggest thing is, in the Nikki Foster campaign, we talk a lot about a concept called servant leadership. So servant leadership is reaching out to people and listening, reaching out and being their advocate, And that's the first thing to do, is to listen. I will say, being in Warren County, we do have an agriculture industry there, so I know we are in an urban center now, but again, the district is vast, and we have to be willing to chat with folks that are dealing with those challenges. I will say I'm very proud that I was invited to a Think Regional event before I ran for this race for U.S. Congress. It was hosted actually in Springboro, which is part of the district, all the way up close to Dayton. And it was a chance for us to sit down, and I was invited with other business leaders. I'm a businesswoman at GE Aviation, but I was sitting next to folks from the agriculture industry. And I think a lot of that's gonna take that level of business sense that I learned at GE Aviation to sit down with other business leaders and say, hey, tell me about your business, and let's talk about how we can work together and do things right for the entire region. And so it is going to take that servant leadership, that humility to sit down with farmers and say, hey, look, you know, I know we want to do what's right for the climate, but we also need to be able to eat and put food on the table. So how can we make those two things coexist? And that's something that I learned flying big airplanes in the Air Force, is being a mission-focused leader. A lot of times when you're sitting in the cockpit with someone else, you don't care what race, religion, or creed they belong to, you just are there working together to get the mission done. And I plan to do that, and I have done that in my military career and in my business career, to work together with folks that we can find ways to negotiate and coexist and drive outcomes for the folks all across this district. And the way we do that is by having the right servant leader at the table to be able to drive those outcomes. So thank you for that question.
Hi, my name is Noemi. I wanted to ask, so Steve Chabot, along with most of Congress, both Republican and Democrat, have consistently voted to increase our military budget. This budget has been used to fund endless wars and regime change in the Middle East. So would you vote in support of further increasing the U.S. military budget?
Well, thank you for that question. I will say, like I've mentioned before, being a military veteran, I am in a unique position to hold and question what decisions are made by those general officers. I do think we spend an exorbitant amount on of our budget on military spending, and I plan to be a check on that power. I will say I'm proud to be a Democrat. I don't believe we need to be in these endless wars. We need to have a solution to get out of both Afghanistan and Iraq. Those are things that we can do. We need leaders of courage that are going to step up against the military-industrial complex and say, no more. We're not going to be spending money at the rate that we've been spending, because we have problems we need to solve in our own backyard, and we haven't been addressing them properly. Like we've mentioned before, healthcare is a big concern for many of us, but so is climate. And the way that we do that is by making sacrifices in the budget in places like defense spending. So I appreciate that question, and there's no better champion for reducing defense spending than somebody who's actually understands it and has been at the tip of the spear, as we call it, who knows what it's like to, when the military makes decisions that do not make any sense, that continue to spend money that we could be using to educate the next generation, that could be used for renewable energy, that could be used for more purposeful outcomes than dropping a bomb somewhere. So I appreciate that question.
Thank you. I think, as you know, all of us in our household budgets, what you spend is a reflection of your priorities, and I do not support the increases, these exorbitant increases in our military budget, and it's been at the expense of other really important priorities like healthcare and education and renewable energy and many other things. So teacher pay, I think there are a lot of things that we need to be investing more in infrastructure as well. This big infrastructure project that the current administration said they were going to invest in, we've yet to see that happen, and yet the military budget continues to grow. So I think we need to be clear and strong as a country and what our priorities are, and the growth, reverse the trends in the military spending and invest in other areas that are true priorities.
Hello, my name is Ann, and I was at a meeting with the Sierra Club, and I don't know if you're aware of it, but they're planning on fracking the Ohio River. And they pointed out at the Sierra Club that they have this in the Mississippi River, and they call it Cancer Alley. what these guys do is they are putting poisons into our water system. And it's sort of like rampant capitalism in the sense that if it makes money, it's okay. And I'm wondering what you would do as far as allowing fracking all the way down. It's going to come down, and we're at the bottom of that part, not all the way further. And I'm very concerned about this because I have a daughter that works for the California EPA. She says they're having that problem in California. They are dumping things into the water that people can't identify because they're not being told about it. So how do you feel about that, and what would you do when this comes? It's starting.
Yeah, I am hugely concerned about that. Thank you for raising it. I think the rollback of regulations and environmental protections at the EPA is terrifying. I think a lot of this is happening under the radar at all levels. There's been a rollback. I mean, even knowing, I know a number of people that work at the EPA, and they're white knuckling it. Like there is research, evidence, all of us that, it shouldn't be controversial, but those of us that believe in science and data, it is soundly being dismissed. It's being, the organization, EPA is being led by people who are partisans. These are political people. These are not, the experts in environmental protections, which have taken decades to get in place. So it is terrifying, and I think we need to organize and move up, not just at all levels, to push back on what is happening. I think in some cases, like the corporate average fuel economy standards, that's one of the ones where we require efficiency in cars, and that took decades to get those standards in place, right? Decades to get those CAFE standards that require fuel efficiency that we have had, that we had the technology for a long time, but didn't have the political will to do it. We did it, and now the current administration has rolled it back. And the only reason that car companies aren't changing is because of states like California that have their own regulations, that the car companies aren't going to make separate cars for California versus the rest of the country. So one way to push back, in addition at the federal level, is also to work with states. We unfortunately have we're one of the worst states currently on environmental protections, but I think we definitely have to be working at both federal and state level to push back on this, and it is hugely concerning, and we have to focus on the data and the science.
We have to reflect as a country and as Ohioans on what we value and why. I will tell you, I was raised as a Girl Scout, so we were taught to leave the environment, leave the situation better than you found it, which I think is why I ended up in uniform. Even though I couldn't stand the brownie uniform, I ended up in uniform anyway, serving in the Air Force. But I believe that a lot of it has to do with what our values are. And if we value our families and our communities, if we value our planet, then we need to prioritize them. And we need leaders of character that are willing to step up to the fossil fuel industry and say no more. What I mean by that is when we talk about this type of work that's happening, it is doing damage to our climate, to our environment. We don't even know what the long-term effects are going to be from this type of drilling. I don't think we quite can wrap our arms around it. When you talk about cancer risks, when we talk about sinkholes and earthquakes in places like Oklahoma, it really does concern me, and it's happening in our own backyard. And unless we have the right leaders that are willing to stand up against Donald Trump, Steve Chabot, and the fossil fuel industry, these things will keep happening, and there will continue to be what we call mission creep. Well, we'll just continue to say it's okay. And so I do appreciate your question, and I think that we have to consider who are we electing and whether or not we have leaders of character that are going to stand up to those industries and do the right thing for our communities. So thank you for asking.
Pardon me, Antoinette, because, things are born, they have middle life, and they end. So too our conversation. Are you in line, sir? No. So Faith, are you the last one?
No, he's the last. So we have 3 more questions.
3 more questions. Perfect with our timing. Thank you. If everybody agrees to that, then let's continue.
Okay, perfect. Hi, Kate and Nikki. So since Trump's election, we've seen a major increase in discrimination against LGBTQ Americans, and we've seen a major increase in violence against LGBTQ folks, particularly trans women of color. I would love to know your stance on the Equality Act and other ways that you plan to protect LGBTQ folks across the board in the United States.
So the last time I saw my Uncle Leslie alive, I was about 6 years old. I remember him dropping off a tricycle to my sister for her birthday. He died of AIDS, AIDS-related pneumonia. He was gay. And my father always taught me about just how much love he had for our family, and it taught me about love is love, something that is very personal to me. And it was hard to lose him because we only had maybe a month's notice that how serious his condition was. So from a very young age, it's been instilled in me that love is love and we should treat everybody with equality. I will tell you, we practice that same belief in the US military. When we repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell, that was a huge deal. And I was part of that group of officers that were proud to be serving openly with my gay friends. I did play rugby at the Air Force Academy, so most of my girlfriends are married to each other and they're raising families. And a lot of them are my donors and my supporters. So it couldn't be more personal to me to continue to protect folks in the LGBT community because they are my friends, they are my loved ones. They are serving in the US military, putting their lives on the line. And so, yes, I believe in equality. Yes, I believe in love, and I'm so proud that we have all different supporters, part of my donors, and also all different types of folks coming to work with us as in my intern team. Because being the daughter of 2 immigrants, being from a mixed race family, both my parents are Asian and European mix. I believe that there's love, and it comes from all different colors, sizes, and shapes, and I really do want to be an advocate for equality in Congress, and I'm so glad that you asked that question.
Yes, thank you, Faith. Yes, like Richard started tonight, that this is about love, and we welcome all love, and I think our strength as a country is our diversity and our inclusiveness and our welcomeness. So many of my family, friends are LGBTQ, and I love them, and I am so proud of the progress we have made on these issues, and also so cognizant of how much further we have to go. So I think I am a huge advocate and champion of these issues because it's the right thing to do, because it's all I know. It's what makes, our community strong. And so let's keep pushing on it. I'm proud to have the endorsement of Equality PAC and really embrace these issues and look forward to working together with the community as well.
And thank you. Nikki raised her hand, so
Just a quick response. I've also been endorsed by Equality Cincinnati, so I'm very proud of that endorsement, so thank you.
Kate, did you have a response from there?
Oh, no, that...
Okay, great, thank you.
My name is Heather Sturgill, and this is the 30th anniversary, this year is the 30th anniversary of the ADA. And I still have friends that cannot get out of nursing homes because there isn't housing in the community that's accessible. The employment opportunities are almost non-existent. Transportation is literally impossible for some areas of the county, the city. If you're in office, what can you do in the areas of housing, transportation, getting out of nursing homes, durable medical equipment, anything along those lines to make the lives of people with disabilities more integrated into society?
Thank you. That is such an important issue. I think it is an area where we have so much work to be done. I think there has to be both more regulation and more investment in in all the areas that you mentioned, in transportation, in housing, in across the board. And I would start by listening and sitting down, with the community and understanding where are the key needs and opportunities that we need to make progress on, and how do we get all the right people at the table to make progress there. Because I do think it's an area that a lot of people, until they experience it themselves personally or have a personal friend, don't understand how great the challenges are and what lack of access we do have right now. And so I appreciate you raising it. I think we need champions on these issues, and we need to find ways to elevate the issue so that more people have understanding and empathy around these needs, and we can get more people on board with advancing them. Thank you.
It's so good to see you again. I sat next to you at the community conversations in Northside, so I'm really glad that you asked that question. I remember you and I see you. I will say that you do tend to take things for granted, right? And when Dad was like Popeye to me, he was like Superman to me. And he'd worked 6 days a week as an auto mechanic. And when he fell off that ladder, he broke his back. And when we talk about losing everything, I mean, he went on disability, and there is a disability shelf. If you make too much money on disability, they can take it away from you. And right now, Donald Trump is threatening people on disability. Did you know that? He's threatening to take it away. He's threatening to give some sort of litmus test to people with disabilities, and I think that is unacceptable. But we need advocates in Congress that are gonna fight for those things, and having experienced that with Dad, having seen him try to walk to my Air Force Academy graduation, that campus is vast, by the way. Just imagine a guy with a cane who was overweight because he had also gained a ton of weight being depressed from losing his job and losing everything. We've experienced that in my home, and I think that we need more advocates that see you and that understand what you're going through, because we've been there too. And seeing my own dad suffer that way really opened my eyes to what so many Americans are dealing with, but then so are my disabled veterans. I'm 60% disabled. I'm a disabled veteran, and I will tell you that lots of us are functioning disabled veterans, and we can give back to society, but that's if we are given the opportunities to do so. So I'd love it if you come and join my campaign, because I want to hear what you have to say and how we can improve things in the federal government to make your life easier. So the table's right behind you, so I hope you give us your information so we can keep talking. Thank you.
Nikki, Kate, thank you. I'm a professor at a local university, and I was thinking about all these questions I could ask you while I was ruminating in line. And I decided to ask one for my students, right? So I see a lot of people go in and out of my classroom year after year. And a lot of them take on student loans. I don't really feel that's an apt term. I feel like education mortgage is more fitting. So we're just wondering, with the rising cost of education, what do you have ideas about that?
I do. First of all, going back to my dad's story. So I was a junior in college when that happened. So September 11th happened and my dad fell off a ladder. It was a really bad year. And I will tell you that I still had 2 younger siblings that had to find a way to pay for college. Luckily, I had a scholarship. But with him losing his source of income and now mom being a single mother and not having finished her degree really took a hit on my home. And I will say that both my brother and sister are still suffering and crippled by some of this debt. My brother has 3 jobs after having earned a college degree and has so much debt that he can't afford to start a family, he can't afford childcare, and he can't afford a new home. And I will say that I did send money home to help my brother and sister keep going to school because there weren't enough federal grants available to folks that make just a little too much to be able to get help with their school. So I think that there's no better advocate for hardworking families from the middle class like me that are gonna advocate to not only bring federal grants and expand them to people like my family, but also to hold down the cost of interest rates for loans. I do think it's getting outrageous, and you're right, it's in some cases worse than paying for a mortgage. So I plan to be an advocate for those hardworking families because we should value an education and continue to allow families like my own to thrive, and I appreciate your question tonight.
Thank you. And I am 42 and I'm still paying off my student loans as well. So it's real. It's a huge burden. It influences what people can do for their career decisions even. A lot of people that might want to go into public sector, you know, choose to have to go into private sectors. They have to pay off their student loans. There are so many ramifications to this. And I think this is bold new democracy that is action-oriented. I think there are practical actions we need to take. We've got to put a cap on interest rates. I think we do need to have, I don't know what the right level is, if it's like 100,000 or something, but loan forgiveness based on your income level post-graduation, so that there is some loan forgiveness for people that are, and they're able to make career choices that are in line with their interests and skills, and not be underwater for years and years of their lives and overwhelmed by this debt. I also am supportive of really advancing access and fully funding 2-year technical degrees as well, because not 4-year college isn't for everyone. And so I think there are practical things that we need to push for and take, because what is going on in our education system and the crazy rates of growth that are outpacing inflation significantly is not sustainable, and it's not okay, and we have to take actions to address that.
Let's give all of our questioners a big round of applause. And Nikki, you had a...
Just one echo. I do also support the 2-year associate's degree for a trade. Being the daughter of an auto mechanic, I see the importance of working with your hands and supporting a family through that. His question was more focused on 4-year degrees, but I do support fully funding a 2-year associate's degree in trades. That's all I have.
Do you agree with me that these are amazing people? So blessed, and we have our work to do, and it's not easy, because we need to elect beginning tomorrow morning. You can do early voting tomorrow morning at 9, yes, and through the 17th. We have our work to do to elect one of these, and it's a really hard, painful, challenging, but they're young and they're going to keep going no matter what anyway. But it is up to us to work at this. We will win District 1. I want to try chant in this space. Follow me. We will win District 1. 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 Whoa! It is up to us to be activists, to talk to our neighbors, to get out and put up the signs, make the phone calls, canvass. This is our time for action. My encouragement, please, if you like both, go to both of their tables. They have all their staff there. If you love one, go to one, make a commitment. You don't mind staying for a bit and talking, so a chance to meet each of the candidates personally and ask them perhaps even a more personal question than we covered here. This is our opportunity. Please be here at the action tables, and the Bold New Democracy has 2 tables because we covered both doors. Please stop there if you have questions. Thank you so much for coming, and let's make it happen.
Thanks, Richard.